Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate you holding this hearing. I want to thank you and Representative Conley specifically for your work in this ongoing effort to try to make sense out of what I consider to be a nonsensical position for Mr. DeJoy and the U.S. Postal Service. Ms. Stevens, since everybody has been coming at you for questions and comments and observations, I'm going to try to do the same thing here, not to pick up on you, but to try to get more information. I understand, as has been said several times, that the U.S. Postal Service Office of the Inspector General found that the cost of an electric vehicle over 20 years would be 8.5% lower than that projected of a gas-powered vehicle and the cost of that vehicle. And yet, as has been stated here several times, Postmaster General DeJoy still argues that electric vehicles are not cost effective, which sounds like fuzzy math to me when you have the numbers to prove that they are, and then you almost deny those numbers. You're not a heart surgeon, and you're certainly not a brain surgeon, but Postmaster DeJoy wants to position the service, the Postal Service, to compete with companies, as he says, such as UPS, FedEx, Amazon, and as has been stated, all three of which have made aggressive efforts to electrify their fleets. Those are who we're going to be competing with now and into the future. So if you could, rather subjectively, give, again, some sort of explanation as to why the Postal Service is only allocating 10,000 of the 50,000 in its initial order with Oshkosh, I would appreciate your comments and your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to address that. I think the findings of the OIG, we were really pleased when they took a look at our total cost of ownership model and developed their own model independently to see some consistency, and perhaps we'd be able to hear from the OIG on that as well. What the OIG's findings revealed were very, very similar to the Postal Service's modeling efforts. When we look at the entire fleet, there is not, over the course of the 20-year life of the asset, even though it's the fuel is cheaper, and in theory, the maintenance is also cheaper over that period of time, the savings from fuel and maintenance benefits is not sufficient to overcome the higher investment value that's required for electric vehicles. And so
okay, I kind of thought you were going to say that. So Let me point out something else, if there's no cost difference there. Congress has helped the Postal Service fill its coffers with billions of dollars in the last few years. So if there was any shortfall, there is none now. In 2020, this Congress approved an emergency $10 billion pandemic relief act to your organization. And just this year, Congress passed Chairwoman Maloney's Postal Service Reform Act, which will relieve the Postal Service of $107 billion in past due amounts and future payments. So my current understanding is that the agency has right now $24 billion in cash, according to information provided by the Treasury. If that is so, why does the Postal Service and Mr. DeJoy continue to argue that it's too expensive to increase the proportion of electric vehicles in its order with Oshkosh? Could you speak to that?
Certainly. It has to do with our Delivering for America plan, our strategic objectives and priorities. The vehicle fleet implementation is a portion of those priorities and funding requests, but it's a small portion by comparison. We've deferred maintenance, we've deferred investments. It's not just our vehicles that are long overdue to be replaced. There are structural, infrastructure-related things that are part of what the Postal Service requires to operate effectively and efficiently and over the course of decades to come.
Thank you. I want to reclaim my time. What we can't defer is what's happening in terms of the health of Americans as a result of an enlarging carbon footprint that now the United States Postal Service, which operates 1/3 of all the vehicles in the inventory of the United States government, continues to ignore or delay or to put aside the issues that deal with health. I have here a report from the American Lung Association, which points out the dangers of going down the path that the Postal Service is currently on by refusing to electrify its vehicles into the future. And they talk about asthma, they talk about lung cancer in communities, wheezing and coughing, shortness of breath among children, and the cardiovascular harm. I could go through a long list of things. This is one thing we can't defer. We cannot assume that people can still get sick, chronically or otherwise, because we don't have the foresight to recognize the real benefits in moving over time, like FedEx and Amazon and UPS, toward electrical vehicles. So it breaks my heart that there are these reasons which don't stand the test in terms of the truth, and reasons that are being put forth to this committee repeatedly about why it's okay to, again, get all of these gas guzzlers for the next 20 years, putting pollutants into the air, affecting the health of people, and engaging us in a cost that could be, as you said, deferred or certainly tamped down.